Sad news this noon from the entertainment world. Country music legend Loretta Lynn has died. Behind the rhinestones, tour buses, and Opry spotlights, country's legends lived lives messier, stranger, and more haunted than we ever imagined. Loretta Lynn, the fearless voice behind so many truth-telling songs, carried one such story for years, quiet, personal, and utterly unexpected. It happened in a room built for music, in a place filled with memory. And when she finally shared what she saw, it made even the most grounded folks pause. Was it nostalgia, imagination, or something no mic could capture? Whatever it was, it left her shaken. What really happened in that studio, and why did Loretta choose to speak up when she did? Roots in Butcher Hollow. Loretta Lynn's story begins in Butcher Hollow, a secluded pocket of Van Lear, Kentucky, where poverty wasn't a phase. It was the standard. She was the second of 8 children in a small one-room cabin that offered little comfort. Owned by a coal company that effectively ran the entire town, life was dictated by corporate control. The houses, the general store, and even the money used. Script kept families like the Webbs dependent and struggling. From a young age, Loretta knew the meaning of deprivation. She spent her earliest years sleeping on the floor, wrapped in blankets beside her siblings during freezing Appalachian winters. These experiences not only shaped her toughness, but also instilled in her the tenacity she would carry throughout her life. Her upbringing was also marked by serious health challenges that exposed the brutal realities of rural life. When she suffered a dangerous ear infection as a child, doctors resorted to drilling holes in her head to preserve her hearing, a painful, archaic procedure that underscored the severity of her condition. Her mother, who couldn't afford to stay at the hospital, walked 10 miles daily just to be by her daughter's side. Later, a leg infection brought Loretta back to the hospital, revealing yet again how thin the line was between survival and tragedy. It was moments like those, not entirely forms of physical tests, which create within Loretta's being a silence of deep resilience and learning how to fight a long time before she even stepped onto any stage. These contained harsh surroundings where Loretta learned to discover music as a refuge and also as a calling. It was not a dream for her growing up with Nashville or fame. His earliest stage performances consisted of lullabies sung to younger siblings on the creaky wooden porch deep in the hollows. With an absence of formal training and instruments, her voice became her only instrument, carrying through the hills with such force that neighbors working in nearby fields would stop and listen to that sound. It was this small but grassroots encouragement that helped a lot in boosting her confidence. It was in some small, everyday moments that the voice sounded less like a comfort to other people and more like a means of transforming her life. Loretta stayed true to her roots all her life. She was proud of her very humble beginnings and never let success take away her tie to Butcher Hollow. He always went back to his roots in interviews and through the music he produced, most famously in Coal Miner's Daughter, which would have a big part in defining his image and legacy. Even when perks and accolades flowed, she never spent her past in glory. She preserved it to remind her where she came from and how far she had come. But just as her voice began to rise above the hills, life threw her into a role no girl should face so young. A teenage bride. Loretta Lynn's entry into adulthood was sudden and complex, shaped by her marriage to Oliver "Too Little" Lynn at an age when most girls were still navigating adolescence. Though Loretta often claimed she was married at 13, official documents later confirmed she was 15, still extremely young and woefully unprepared for the realities of married life. In mid-20th century rural Kentucky, such early unions weren't rare, especially with parental consent. But that didn't mean they were ideal. Her parents strongly disapproved of the match. Her mother refused to attend the ceremony or sign any legal documents, and her father remained emotionally distant from Doolittle. These early signs of tension foreshadowed the challenges Loretta would soon face in what was far from a storybook beginning. From the outset, the relationship was fraught with volatility. On their wedding night, Doolittle physically struck Loretta over a harmless misunderstanding, an act that would be the first of many instances of domestic violence. The marriage was marked by instability. Doolittle often drank heavily, disappeared for extended periods, and was frequently unfaithful. Yet amid this chaos, Loretta developed an inner strength that would define her public image in the years to come. She did not keep quiet. She hit back. "If he hit me, I'm gonna hit him back," she clearly said in interviews, refusing to be victimized by anyone. This became an undercurrent in her music, and it made her relatable to countless women faced with similar domestic struggles. Ironically, the same man who brought so much personal distress also brought her into music. Doolittle recognized Loretta's talent, and he so wanted to compete with the women on the air that he bought her a $17 guitar and encouraged her to give singing professionally a try. After all, Loretta was just a busy young mother with no hope at all for stardom and little confidence in her voice. Doolittle also took the lead by looking after her early bookings and driving her from radio station to radio station. From something that started out as his project, Loretta ended up assuming a career in it. With time, Loretta began to take charge of her life and her work. While her emergence within the country music industry was also a pathway to self-empowerment, she would always give due credit to Doolittle's earlier influences upon her path. The complexities of their relationship spilled over into Loretta's songwriting in a brutally candid way. Hits such as Fist City and Don't Come Home A-Drinking were not vague character studies. They were lyrical blueprints to her life with Doolittle. She took those agonizing memories and transformed them into loud and clear anthems, addressing women everywhere. Loretta stayed in that marriage for decades, trying to live by the spirit of commitment, not wanting to break her children's hearts and holding steadfast to her belief that Doolittle had a right to her love. Thunder. Motherhood amidst hardship. Motherhood came early and rapidly for Loretta Lynn, defining much of her young adult life. By the age of 22, she had already given birth to 4 children, taking on the immense responsibility of raising a family while navigating the instability of a marriage to Doolittle Lynn. With her husband often absent, either working or indulging in long drinking binges, the burden of childcare and household duties fell almost entirely on Loretta. She washed cloth diapers by hand, hauled buckets of water to cook and clean, and managed a household in near total isolation. The family lived on limited resources, and during one particularly desperate stretch, Loretta and her children survived on dandelions for nearly 2 weeks. These extreme hardships, faced in silence and with grit, shaped the authenticity she brought to her songwriting. Her health, too, bore the cost of relentless pregnancies and minimal medical care. After delivering her second child, Loretta suffered 2 miscarriages, followed by a life-threatening bout of blood poisoning. With no financial means for hospitalization, she was forced to recover at home, unattended by professionals. Later, during the birth of her third child, she required an emergency C-section. But with Doolittle unreachable, outlogging in the wilderness, Loretta was alone in the hospital, sedated in pain, and without the support of her husband. Her profound empathy and widened array of emotional palettes for scribbling her powerful lyrics were accrued from experiences, both emotionally and physically draining. Fame was sometimes a grounding factor, and at others, the source of devastation being a mother. Her twins were born when Loretta began gaining notice in her music career. Initially stricken with despair over the prospect of balancing touring with 6 kids, she had to be happy about their arrival. Emotional separation hit her hard from the start. Her daughter, Betty Sue, would relate stories of her mother leaving for tours, causing her mother so much pain, a memory Loretta would carry throughout her life. Missing her children, she admitted more than once, was the biggest drawback of being famous. This conflict, vexed in her heart, emerged as the haunting voice and lyrics of her songs, songs infused with longing, with fatigue, with fierce maternal love. The enormous emotional weight of her motherhood nourished much of Loretta's most defining and controversial music. The song, "The Pill," which explicitly honored women's rule over reproduction, spoke the truth of her life, of unending pregnancies, and the need to regain some control. The song was banned by over 60 radio stations, yet it echoed the truth for women everywhere who recognized their plight in Loretta's words. Loretta was a woman who was turning pain into music. Loretta Lynn's artistry was born not from formal training or commercial polish, but from a life of raw, often painful experience. Unlike many songwriters who crafted fictional tales or leaned on polished industry formulas, Loretta drew directly from her own struggles, transforming hardship into deeply personal, emotional music. Her 1967 breakthrough hit "Don't Come Home A-Drinking" with "Lovin' on Your Mind" was not a hypothetical scenario. It was a pointed reflection of her life with Loretta Lynn. The song laid bare her frustration with a husband who would return home drunk and demanding, a truth that resonated with countless women across America. Its success, becoming the first #1 country song solo female artist, marked a cultural shift, proving there was a mass audience for songs that told unvarnished truths from a woman's perspective. Her courage in addressing such topics continued with "Fist City," a fiery anthem directed at a real woman who had been making eyes at her husband during performances. Far from playing the role of the passive, long-suffering wife, Loretta used the song to issue a very public warning: cross the line, and there would be consequences. At a time when women in country music were expected to be demure or sweetly heartbroken, Loretta's refusal to back down was radical. Though some radio stations hesitated to play the song, fearing its aggressive tone, audiences embraced it. Her voice gave form to a quiet rage many women felt, but had never heard reflected on the radio. "Fist City" soared to #1, cementing Loretta's reputation as an artist who wasn't afraid to sing what others were too cautious to say. Loretta's catalog, beyond her first hits, became a sort of social record of a woman's life experience in mid-20th century America. Songs like "The Pill" and "Rated X" were smoking guns for discussing such taboo subjects as the use of birth control and divorce. These songs faced prohibitions and had controversy surrounding them, but their popular appeal showed Loretta's fearless honesty hit a deeply resonating chord. She didn't only entertain, but also offered validation. Through music, she permitted women to be angry, assertive, exhausted, and proud. Her lyrics became lifelines. They connected her listeners with a voice that understood not only their joy, but their daily pain and frustration. She didn't glamorize suffering. She exposed it and demanded that it be heard. Not fire, but water flows through the Grand Ole Opry on its centenary anniversary in 2025. Loretta's immortality as a truth singer in the musical world was already at a highly legendary level by then. Tribute performances honored "Don't Come Home A-Drinking" and "The Pill" for both their catchy tunes and their seismic cultural impact. Young artists saw her as the one who cleared space for them to tell their own stories without fear. Authenticity in country music was where her legacy lay, and not just about topping charts. Thus, with public art transforming private pain, Loretta Lynn helped to redefine what a country song could be, all while leaving behind a body of work as powerful as the woman who created it. Tragic loss of Jack Benny Lynn. In 1984, Loretta Lynn experienced the kind of heartbreak no parent ever wants to face: the loss of a child. Her son, Jack Benny Lynn, died at just 34 years old in a tragic accident on the family's ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. Jack had been out riding horseback and attempted to cross the Duck River, a known hazardous area. It's believed he was thrown from his horse and struck his head on a rock, leading to his drowning. The horse was found waiting loyally at the river's edge. But Jack's body wasn't discovered until later. At the time of the accident, Loretta was hospitalized in Illinois due to exhaustion. Loretta Lynn was the one who had to deliver the devastating news. Loretta collapsed from grief and was again hospitalized, underscoring the deep emotional and physical shock of the moment. Jack was often described as Loretta's favorite child, not because she loved him more, but because of the special bond they shared. He carried his father's wild streak and had a reputation for partying. But in the months before his death, Jack had begun to settle down, showing a commitment to his wife and children. Loretta had been proud of this transformation and hopeful for his future. His death felt not only tragic, but untimely, cutting short what she believed was the beginning of a better chapter for him. Loretta later admitted she felt unsettled by the circumstances, occasionally voicing suspicion that something about the accident didn't sit right with her, though nothing was ever proven beyond the official explanation. Loretta was in real pain, but she didn't crawl under the covers. She threw herself into her work and turned the music room into a place for catharsis. She wouldn't be able to release one song that directly spoke of him, but the tones of her later music were soaked in that atmosphere. A quieter tone, a more introspective one, and a heavier dose of sorrow. Interviews in subsequent years always found their way back to Jack, as Loretta would recount how the absence of this special man haunts her. She spoke about the ceaseless throb that could not go away, about guilt over being away when he died, and about the heavy silence that prevails upon that ranch that once he trod. For fans and peers, her resilience against personal loss gave her a superstructure that towered above them all. When the Grand Ole Opry celebrated its centenary in 2025, Jack's memory was quietly yet compellingly omnipresent in the tributes paid to Loretta. Her loss had become part of her public narrative, a mother grieving behind knots of glamorous careers and brave songs. The tragedy humanized Loretta like no award or hit song ever would. For the country music community paying tribute to her at the Opry, it's not just about her musical accomplishments. Nobody knows how to devote oneself to one passion while dealing with such an unimaginable pain. It takes Herculean strength to keep singing, and that is what Loretta is being honored for. One of the most profound facets of her continuing legacy is her ability to survive such loss without failing to give herself through her artistry. Just when life seemed to settle, something strange walked into the studio and left her stunned. Loretta's final encounter with Johnny Cash. Loretta Lynn was no stranger to the unexplained, but one eerie experience in the twilight of her career stood out among the rest. In 2016, while recording her Grammy-nominated album Full Circle at Johnny Cash's Cabin Studio in Hendersonville, Tennessee, she experienced something that chilled her to the core. As she sang one of Johnny's songs, she paused mid-session, visibly startled. She later told those present that she had seen a man in a gray suit walk through the door, a figure she swore looked exactly like Johnny Cash. The dim lighting of the studio may have made others skeptical, but Loretta's reaction was instant and sincere. She didn't claim to imagine it or romanticize it as symbolic. She believed it was real. This moment took on even greater meaning because of the emotional and historical weight of the location. The studio, built by Johnny himself in 1978, had become a creative haven for both established artists and emerging voices. Loretta's connection to the Cash family ran deep. She had long admired Johnny and June Carter Cash, and worked closely with their son, John Carter Cash, who produced her later albums. The fact that the sighting occurred during the recording of a song tied to Johnny only added to the mystique. For Loretta, the encounter felt less like a scare and more like a visitation, an artistic nod from a fellow legend whose presence had never quite left the room. Loretta's history with the supernatural extended far beyond this one moment. Her home in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, had been reputedly haunted, allegedly by her. From ghostly Civil War soldiers to shadowy forms appearing on balconies, she had many a story, and they were all consistent. She even wrote songs about her experiences, such as "This Haunted House," embedding the paranormal into her storytelling and narrative, rather than treating it as an aberration. Loretta admitted the events as part of life and never really sensationalized them. Believing others was of little concern to her. She was certainly in no doubt about what she had seen, felt, and heard down the years. This openness to the unknown began to form yet another layer to her persona, an intriguing blend of real country woman and supernatural storyteller. The noise of ghosts in the studio with Loretta resurfaced during the 2020 Grand Ole Opry Centennial, remembered fondly by those who had worked with her and who remembered her spirit. This was not meant to frighten. Rather, it reaffirmed country music's deeply knit connections that transcend time, space, and possibly even death. In honoring Loretta and Johnny together, the Opry acknowledged tangible musical contributions to their indelible but ephemeral presence on hallowed ground. For Loretta, who followed her instincts and spoke her truth, that day in the studio wasn't a ghost story. It was a last farewell from an old friend, collaborations, and musical evolution. Throughout her career, Loretta Lynn proved that age and legacy were not obstacles to reinvention. One of the most striking examples came in 2004 when she collaborated with Jack White, the rock frontman of the White Stripes, on the groundbreaking album Van Leer Rose. At a time when many of her peers had stepped away from the spotlight, Loretta stunned the industry by releasing a raw, emotionally potent album that she wrote entirely herself. White, acting not as a mentor but as a facilitator, helped her tap into a younger, rock-leaning audience without altering her essence. The result was a collection of songs that were deeply rooted in country tradition, but carried an edge and urgency that felt modern. The project earned 2 Grammy Awards and reminded the world that Loretta's voice, both literal and artistic, was as vital as ever. Respect was the name of the game for this collaboration. Jack White did not try to modernize or polish Loretta. He took the raw emotion of her storytelling and gave it arrangements that had the flavor of blues, garage rock, and Appalachian folk. Portland, Oregon was a sultry duet that became the crown jewel. It simply proved that when you honor authenticity, it transcends genre. Critics hailed the album for its audacious sincerity and awakened a new generation of fans who would not have known Loretta as coal miner's daughter, but now see her as an artistic force, refusing to fade into nostalgia. Loretta's collaborative spirit only intensified in her 80s. After finishing her 46th studio album, Still Woman Enough, in 2021, she put together a bold and celebratory statement under the direction of her daughter, Patsy Lynn Russell, and John Carter Cash. The album gathered a lineup of the strongest women in country music: Reba McEntire, Carrie Underwood, Tanya Tucker, Margot Price, and more. These collaborations were intergenerational handshakes. Loretta reaching back to support the women walking the path she helped carve, a testament to female empowerment. Released in March 2021, Still Woman Enough marked Loretta Lynn's 46th studio album and a powerful declaration of continued relevance. At 88, Loretta was not only looking back on her groundbreaking career, but affirming her enduring voice in country music. Co-produced by her daughter, Patsy Lynn Russell, and John Carter Cash, the album served as a tribute to the women who shaped the genre. The title track, featuring Reba McEntire and Carrie Underwood, brought together 3 generations of female country stars, reinforcing a message of resilience and unity. Past and present were bridged through the novel mixes of modern collaborations and reimagined classics in these albums. Newer life to songs like You Ain't Woman Enough, with Tanya Tucker, and One's on the Way, with Margot Price, remained vital in revisiting familiar themes through fresh lenses and contemporary contexts. Rather, Loretta reclaimed these songs as beginnings of conversations with different generations. Her role did not include being an icon, but was instead one of a mentor to indicate just how far women have come in the country industry and how far there was to go. Also central to the impact of the album was personal storytelling. Loretta's beginnings were retold brutally honestly in Coal Miner's Daughter recitation, while My Love was dedicated to her deceased husband. Keep on the Sunny Side was a tribute to the musical heritage of the Carter family. These made her not only a country legend, but also one of the cultural historians. And when the Grand Ole Opry will be celebrating its 100th anniversary in 2025, Still Woman Enough will be heralded as one of the defining works of her late career, an album that, while physical and symbolic, proved that her voice could still move generations. Loretta's final years and legacy. In her final years, Loretta Lynn continued to embody the resilience and fire that had defined her entire life, even as her health declined. In 2017, she suffered a debilitating stroke at her home in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. The incident forced her to cancel upcoming tour dates and postpone the release of her album Wouldn't It Be Great, a project that held deep personal significance. Just months into her recovery, she fell and broke her hip in early 2018, complicating her condition further. At an age when many would have chosen quiet retirement, Loretta remained focused on her music, determined not to let her body dictate the end of her story. Her determination to keep creating and connecting became an extension of the same willpower that had carried her from Butcher Hollow to global stardom. During her recovery, Loretta maintained a remarkable presence, both online and in the music community. She frequently shared updates on social media, offering fans glimpses into her daily life and proving she still had a sense of humor and fight left in her. Though her mobility was limited, she continued recording music with the help of her family and longtime collaborators. Her 2021 release, Still Woman Enough, was a triumphant return, not just musically, but symbolically. The album, filled with themes of strength and sisterhood, became her final gift to the country music world, reminding everyone that even in her late 80s, she was still a storyteller with something meaningful to say. Loretta died in her sleep peacefully on October 4, 2022, at her favorite ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, at the age of 90. Because of this incident, an incredible chapter in American music is coming to an end. Her family, in a public statement, spoke about her with pride and sorrow and asked for privacy as they grieved. So the ranch was where Loretta had taken refuge and worked her creative pursuits from decades ago. Now became the venue of her final rest, an apt ending to a life hardly ever straying from its Appalachian roots. It was above the earth on which she had drawn so much of her subjects and found peace that she was laid to rest near Doolittle, who in life had been her husband and two of their children. Loretta Lynn's life is far longer than her music. She changed the definition of what it meant to be a woman in country music, breaking barriers with truth, bravado, and a refusal to conform. Her songs spoke to the women, working-class families, and anyone else on the margins who had long been silent. But she was much more than a hitmaker. She was the pioneer who dared to tell industry truths when fantasy was often a safer bet. And then, in the heart of country music's biggest celebration, Loretta's presence returned, stronger than ever. Honoring a legend. In 2025, the Grand Ole Opry celebrated a monumental milestone, its 100th anniversary, and no tribute could be complete without honoring one of its most iconic members, Loretta Lynn. Though she had passed just a few years earlier, her spirit was unmistakably present throughout the event. On May 13th, as part of the Opry 100 Honors Series, the institution dedicated an entire evening to Loretta's legacy. The event brought together family, longtime collaborators, and contemporary stars who had been shaped by her influence. Among the most poignant performances were those by her sister Crystal Gale, granddaughter Emmy Russell, and the duo Twitty and Lynn, made up of her and Conway Twitty's grandchildren, continuing a musical lineage she had helped define. The tribute was more than just a concert, it was a multi-generational conversation through music. Opry members like Martina McBride, Carly Pearce, and Ashley McBride took the stage, not merely to perform Loretta's songs, but to reinterpret them with reverence and modern edge. These artists, many of whom had publicly cited Loretta as a role model, emphasized the continued relevance of her music. They didn't perform to remember her. They performed to prove that her voice, message, and courage still echo loudly in today's country landscape. Each performance was a reminder that Loretta didn't just create hits, she created a blueprint for how to tell the truth through a song. Some of the most highly charged emotional moments came courtesy of Reba McEntire, who honored not only Loretta, but also another country legend, Patsy Cline. She began with an a cappella haunting version of Sweet Dreams of You, before moving on to You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man. It was Loretta's hallmark anthem of strength and defiance. The legacy of Cline and Lynn was to be linked purposefully. They were both women who broke ceilings, and the opera stage would ground their honored memory through innuendos of their trailblazing spirits. The centennial celebration was not just a way to celebrate a historical venue, it was meant to put on record the impact on culture and art of the contributions that came from Loretta Lynn. Her very presence had traditionally been larger than life for opera, and in this tribute, that presence was lovingly captured into the future. Thanks for watching. If Loretta's story moved you or made you see country music in a new light, give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories behind the legends. And hey, don't go just yet. Tap the next video on your screen to keep the journey going. You won't want to miss it.